Most people think of the Caribbean as the playground for the rich. Luxury resorts, cocktails on the beach, glamorous yachts, and it is, but if you dive under the surface, you'll find there's a lot more going on. The Caribbean Sea is part of the huge gulf that divides the North and South American continents. A ragged string of over 50 islands, known as the Greater and Lesser Antilles, runs from Cuba, just south of Florida, round to Trinidad, just off the Venezuelan coast. In this program, Ian Wright works up an appetite.
When do I get breakfast?
Well, what you should have eaten before you came out.
Oh, I got up at 4:30 though. What time's lunch?
Megan McCormick demonstrates her talents as a muleteer.
Come on! Manchita! Yeah! Yeah!
And I, Justine Shapiro, come face to face with live prehistory.
This is the most incredible experience, being face to face with a dinosaur.
There are dozens of tiny tropical paradises across the Caribbean, but the largest islands have the strongest character. Close to the South American mainland is Trinidad and its capital, Port of Spain. It's a large island supported as much by oil and agriculture as tourism. Trinidad is a loud and lively English-speaking party island famous for Carnival and Calypso. Jamaica is the third largest island in the Caribbean. Its capital is Kingston, and it's less than 2 hours by plane from Miami. This lively English-speaking island combines mountainous jungles and beach resorts with a reputation for violence and drugs. Although it's a U.S. territory, Puerto Rico and its capital, San Juan, have retained the flavor of its Hispanic past. The capital, San Juan, was built as a fortress, and the sandstone walls are still there today. The Spanish came for gold, but instead made their fortune cultivating the rich soil. Guadeloupe is the largest of the French Antilles and is more like two distinctly different islands, each with its own city. Its largest city is Pointe-à-Pitre, and it has a distinctly French feel, from the architecture to the delicious food. The local language is Creole, a French-African hybrid. Cuba is the largest island with the largest capital in the Caribbean, with a colorful recent history. Havana reflects its faded Hispanic glory days. Cuba's neighbor is the huge island of Hispaniola, which is split into the Dominican Republic and Haiti, with their capitals Santo Domingo and Port-au-Prince. Haiti is cripplingly poor, having suffered despotic leadership since its independence from France over 200 years ago. It's a tough but remarkable place to visit. The other half of Hispaniola is the Spanish and Creole-speaking Dominican Republic. Safer and so more popular as a cheap tourist resort than Haiti, it is a huge producer of bananas and sugar, with great forested mountains and terrific trekking. As one of Columbus's most important garrisons, it's a good place to look at the history that shaped the character of the islands of the Caribbean. Megan McCormick visited the capital, Santo Domingo.
There's a dark history to this country that few wish to remember. Before the Spanish arrived to set up the colonial headquarters of the New World, the original inhabitants of this island were a race of friendly Taíno Indians. But today, no trace of their existence remains. I am underneath the city of Santo Domingo. Now, when Christopher Columbus arrived here in 1492, he put the 3 million native Indians to work building him this city. However, within 50 years, they were virtually wiped out. They died from exhaustion, starvation, and disease brought by the Spanish. To complete the city and these secret underground tunnels to hide their treasure, the Taíno were replaced by new slaves brought in from Africa. By 1785, 40% of the population were African slaves working in the sugar mills. They were chained up and worked 16 hours a day. Their average life expectancy as slaves was a mere 6 years. 500 years later, the hidden secret of this sacred ground has come back to haunt them. On the anniversary of Christopher Columbus's discovery of the New World, thousands of bodies of slaves, still in their iron shackles, were found in the grounds of this monastery looming over the city.
Indeed, there is a dark history looming over the entire Caribbean. The fertile land promised fantastic wealth from sugar production, but the plantations needed cheap labor. Having almost wiped out the native Caribe and Arawak Indians, the colonists then brought in millions of African slaves to run them. Ian Wright visited a plantation in Jamaica to learn more about the life of the slaves.
Many Jamaicans are descended from slaves. They worked on plantations like Barnet Estates, which is still run by the Jarrett family.
Sugarcane was Jamaica. It was the West Indies. It was also the major economic source for England. Sugar was gold. During the 18th century, the workers would get up at 4 o'clock. They'd cook some breakfast and be out in the field by sunrise and cut till the end of the day, and then they'd go back to the barracks, go to bed, and the routine started again. Just cut the cane and be done with it now.
There.
Yeah.
When do I get breakfast?
Well, what you should have eaten before you came out.
Oh, I got up at 4:30 though.
Yeah. For the only meal that's served out here is lunch.
Is it?
Yeah.
What time's lunch?
Although there were some plantation owners that treated their slaves well, it was still with this, oh, you are less a person than I am, you're like animals and we are people. Although we know our roots are from Africa, but we are Jamaicans.
I've worked long in the field. I've handled plenty of poor.
Few slaves survived the plantations for long, but some escaped. When they were overrun by the British, the Spanish settlers in Jamaica let their slaves escape into the hills. Named Maroons from the Spanish, meaning wild or savage, their descendants remain proudly independent to this day.
Our people refused to be slaves, and it took them over 80 years of war with the British to demonstrate that desire, not only desire, that will, that pledge, never to be slaves.
Through the 19th century, the colonial powers abolished slavery, turning instead to cheap labor from across their empires. Trinidad, in particular, attracted thousands of people seeking escape from unemployment in India, adding to the island's cultural mix. The massive wealth brought by the plantations, combined with freedom from moral scrutiny, turned some parts of the Caribbean into a decadent playground for the ruling elite. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, while most Cubans lived in poverty, thousands of wealthy Americans poured over from Florida in search of booze, drugs, and easy gambling.
Right up until the 1950s, Cuba was the playground for the Western world, while the rest of the country was poor. Places like this attracted gangsters, gamblers, and girls. Well, stop all that. The people of Cuba finally said enough is enough. And in 1959, after years of struggling, Fidel Castro finally seized power. Capitalism got kicked out and communism kicked in.
During the revolution, there are a number of key battles fought by Castro against the forces of the existing military government. But eventually, the two sides met in Santa Clara.
The most important battle to secure victory for the revolution was fought here in Santa Clara. It was led by Che Guevara, and he actually drove this bulldozer into those trains that were full of arms for the government soldiers. 3 days later, they took over the whole of the country.
Haiti was less fortunate. Although its slaves were freed before most other islands, and it was declared an independent republic over 200 years ago, military coups and violent oppression have dogged Haiti's history right up to the present day.
Behind me is its capital, Port-au-Prince, and it is the oldest black republic in the world, but it's got a checkered history of violence and revolution, and the worst dictator being Papa Doc and his son Baby Doc, helped by their evil militia, the Tong Tong Macoute.
95% of the country are pure African. The rest are Arabs and mulattoes, descendants of French masters and African slaves. The language is Creole.
Haiti, in fact, is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. There is welfare, but it's held by only 150 elite families. And with a population of 7 million, that ain't good.
While many islands live up to the Caribbean reputation for relaxed, easy living, the gulf separating rich and poor across the Caribbean has been a source of constant conflict. One of the most recent battles took place on the beautiful spice island of Grenada, resulting in a U.S. invasion. In 1979, the People's Revolutionary Government seized control of Grenada in a coup led by a Grenadian lawyer called Maurice Bishop. With popular support and assistance from Cuba, Bishop began to reform the country. But in 1983, Grenada burst onto the world scene when Bishop and some of his followers were brutally executed by government hardliners. The country collapsed into violent upheaval until U.S. and Caribbean forces intervened to restore order. These Cuban plains on Pearl's airfield stand as a ghostly reminder of those days, days that no one on the island can easily forget.
What was the reason for the revolution?
Dictatorship was right there, police brutality, people got shot, people was beaten, and that's the reason why Maurice Bishop and them decide that they will take this country forward for the sake of the Grenadian people.
When Maurice Bishop and his followers were taken into the courtyard and executed, were you there? Did you see that? And then when the Americans came in, was that a big deal for the Grenadians?
When the American people came, they did restore peace and order in the country.
And it's funny, because after that, Grenada was the place that everybody knew about.
Yes, the whole world knew about Grenada.
Yeah.
Beautiful Spice Isle, Grenada. Yeah.
Despite centuries of turmoil, the vast majority of the people of the Caribbean are the most peaceful, life-loving, cosmopolitan, and open you are ever likely to meet. Getting around the islands is a challenging, uncomfortable, but fun experience. And the most common way to get around and to meet people is on one of the ubiquitous minibuses or maxi taxis.
Basically, this is how you get around the islands. There's all these mini buses, they all have different names, they all go to different places, and they don't cost very much. Sacrifice. No, I don't think I'll be taking that bus. What's the name of your bus?
Milover.
Milover, okay.
Take a seat.
All right, great, thanks. So, we're all packed, ready to go. Hi. What is he doing when he knocks on the, that's like stop, stop now?
Stop.
So the bus stops anywhere people want it to stop?
No, you got bus stops along the way.
Perhaps surprisingly, Cuba's buses are not to be relied upon. So, either you can rent one of its beautiful pre-Castro American cars, or you catch a train on the only railway network in the Caribbean.
The railways here are less crowded than the buses, and as a tourist you have to pay for a ticket in hard currency, but the prices are low. Carriages might be old and worn, but they're comfortable and there's always someone to talk to.
Don't encourage me, alright? Don't sit here in silence. Don't encourage me.
But if the train isn't going your way, do like the Cubans and hitch a lift.
Hola. Vine del río. Vine del río.
Hitching is okay on most islands, but it's not something you want to do in Haiti. But its public transport is insane. Introducing the tuk-tuk.
Basically, if you want to go anywhere, just allow loads of time because you're never sure what the roads are going to do. There's huge traffic jams, there's no traffic lights that work.
Jamaican buses aren't great either, but the alternatives are something to behold.
Are you going to Treasure Beach?
Yeah, man.
Right.
This is a typical rural Jamaican taxi, and believe it or not, they're a good alternative to local buses.
The public transport in Jamaica can sometimes be a bit unreliable. So what I thought I'd do is hire myself a flash motor like this, just for the day. Jeez. Only passed my test about 2 weeks ago, and I don't feel too safe at all.
Or if you really want to risk your neck.
Spoke to you on the phone about hiring a bike.
We have that 250 there, and I think that should take you.
Yeah.
It's reliable as can be.
As can be. Yeah. But is it run smoothly?
Smooth. You're not going to have no problem with it.
Yeah, it looks a bit battered up and a bit rusty there. Is that?
Well, it was because of like people who rented it and drop it and stuff like that, you know. So.
Oh. You hear that? Ooh, that's power.
Renting motorbikes is cheap, but not all companies supply helmets, and you have to watch out for terrible roads and even more terrible drivers.
Well, the bike could be in better condition. The back brake is virtually non-existent, and the speedo don't work. Just minor details. You know, I told you about the dodgy brake on the back of the bike. Look at that. Oh.
Hopping from island to island is another matter altogether. Most have regular passenger ferry services, many have regular flights, but what better way than to hitch a ride on a fishing boat, so long as your stomach can take it.
The truth is, in the Caribbean, it is very hard to find really budget accommodations, even in a place like Caribe, which is so remote. This place costs $50 a night, but for that I get my 4-poster bed, a mattress that is, in a word, firm. This is the living room, some exquisite artwork, tranquility, my mantra. And last but not least, my very own balcony. So it might be a 1-star accommodation, but who cares when you got a view like that?
Many of the former plantation houses in the Caribbean are now guest houses, serving great food and comfortable rooms. But don't expect a bargain. Bed and breakfast can often cost over $300 per night. If you stay away from the obvious resorts, you can find some fascinating places. Ian took a quick tour of some of the more unusual resting places in Haiti and Cuba, as well as the Castle Cave Hotel in Jamaica.
This place is mad. It's like an old film set from Ivanhoe or something. But the view is the best. And it's just got everything you want. Thought I'd treat myself to the most famous hotel in Haiti, the Lofson, immortalised in the Graham Greene novel, The Comedians. Oh. It's a brilliant hotel. It's got a wicked veranda. That's why it attracts all the big stars. Mick Jagger, Marlon Brando, Noel Coward. They've even named the rooms after him. This resort here was built by Celia Sanchez. She was Fidel's sort of secretary come lover. She was the only woman who was up in the mountains with him in the revolution. Well into nature, that's why this is here. Trouble is, the rest of Cuba weren't quite with her on that one, so now it's deserted.